This is Beyond the Noise from Arrow Health. Real voices, raw stories, and the truth about addiction, recovery, and life. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Arrow Health podcast. We're here today with a brand new topic to talk about. And Beck, what are we calling today's podcast?
Today's podcast is Healing Together, Addiction, Family and Recovery. And we've got the wonderful Julie Lieber with us for this podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you,
Thanks
Julie.
for joining us, Julie. So, Julie, families and addiction. Do you want to? Why don't we start at the beginning? Should we discuss really your story and what led you to the world of addiction?
I've been involved with this field very specifically for about well over 20 years, I would say, working various places and spaces. But my big thing, of course, is you get drawn to this field because you have a lived experience in your own family system. So I lived with more than one person in my family that had problems with this. And I was very grateful that it's over 10 years ago now that Arrow started. And I knew a lot of the people working at Arrow, so I was very drawn to come and work with some of those people because I knew that they were fundamentally as passionate as what I am about this healing space, exactly what Beck said. And, you know, if we come back to now, yourself, Toby, and working with you over this period of time, and you more or less saying to me, we would love you to do a family program, it was my deep pleasure to do it because what I knew and everything I was studying, so much goes into the person with the problem. But really, you know, it's a family problem. You know, when addiction takes hold and it takes off, the family's being drawn into all sorts of chaos. And, you know, the 2 points I would make on that is sometimes it's rapid, you know, especially with the drugs that are out there today, and the family gets, all of a sudden they're in denial of the extent of the problem and they get drawn right into it. Or they've been suffering over a long period of time. So really, I would say they're suffering, it's like a war. And they're suffering the effects really of not just PTSD, but what we call complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I feel like that's what we're really addressing with Arrow. You've given me license to be able to go there, and what we're trying to do is find all the latest research that marries up with what your value system is at Arrow.
Yeah, sure.
Julie, there's a quote, and I don't know who it's by, but it says addiction is a family disease. One person uses and the whole family gets sick. And we see that all the time in, you know, every client we see, there's no one free from it. But what I'm wondering is, you know, sometimes we have those instances where the family was sick before the person started using and, you know, do you reckon that makes a difference to the individual and to the situation? So we've got the situation where someone starts using drugs and makes the whole family sick, or we've got a family that's sick already that ends up with, you know, someone in that family using, and, you know, to me that would make it harder to treat if the family was already sick prior to, because there's more, you know, the foundation there is already pretty broken.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. For me, every family's individual. I think because I went on to go further in a Master's of Family Therapy, what you really understand there, we're living in an ecosystem, for want of a better word, in the family. So you've really got to go back and, I believe, look at the generational trauma as well. Got to go back and go, well, where's it all starting from? And how does it come through? Because if someone is carrying, the common term today would be like there's a projection, you know, the deep-seated trauma that gets projected onto your children. So it could be anxiety, it could be a whole raft of things. But it usually would come out as very controlling behaviour in a family member.
Yeah. So
yes, sometimes I agree with you. Someone will pick a drink or a drug up, and I used to say to them when I was counselling at the rehab, so tell me what happened when you picked your first drink or drug up. And they didn't understand that their nervous system was shot and that just floated away all their anxiety.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. But then again, it could start out as recreational drugs. It could start, there's a trauma that you've never told anyone about.
Yeah.
You're carrying a secret. But all of these are part of what our team do, I think, in uncovering, well, what are the real driving forces below the radar.
And would you say that that's why, say, the therapeutic community model that we use up at Arrow, because we emulate the family system and we're trying to get, you know, clients to navigate that with healthier behaviours. Would you say that's probably why that's one of the best ways to manage our clients and help them through this, because the family unit is so significant in their recovery?
Yes, I agree with that 100%. And the one thing that stands out with Arrow, and I know Toby's mother and father, like the family, are just so keen to have it family inclusive, because it's one thing for someone to come from the family system and come into the rehab and our beautiful therapeutic model, which I believe in, because the therapeutic model will cover off on many aspects of what we need to deal with. Like we've got our medical team, you've got, God, when I go through with families and I say, look, they've got their own counsellor, and your counsellors now are just the best. They're excellent. I've been here for so long and watched people come and go. I think the team you've assembled now are amazing. But we've got great facilitators as well. Like I mentioned Josh, I think he's right up there as one of the best. He's so intuitive with how he understands and he's got the words to deal with people. So the team you've got, and then we just were talking before about, I believe, the best psychiatrists in Australia at the moment, which are so rare. And this is such an accolade for you, Toby, to have him there, because he just completes the team in a whole other way that I've ever seen. So we've got all that in place there. But then with the family program we deliver over here, my role is really to try to get to the family. And not everybody wants to work with me. They feel, why do I need to change?
Yeah.
And this is the big question, isn't it? Because they'll come into the therapeutic model, look at what's going on. Well, they've got to come out back to the old pattern of the family.
Yeah.
So I guess at Arrow, the differentiating point for me, what I'm passionate about, and I know you are too, Beck and Toby, is, what we have in the family program, and you back this all the way, Toby, and really different universities are now pointing towards Arrow going, you want to look at family work, look at the family program. So, it's a structured program that we're delivering to really help the families see what it is they need to change more in their dialogue towards the person. How do we put down control? How do we start asking questions about where they're really at to how they move forward?
And would you say that those families that don't want to engage in the program, there's that fear of, I guess, taking some accountability and really diving into that stuff that they don't want to look at? The same as, the people in addiction, when they don't want to come into treatment, they're avoiding something, they don't want to take accountability. So it's the same kind of thing. Not participating is just that lack of, they're too scared to stand up and go, okay, I need to look at me, I need to look at the whole situation here.
And like all of us that know this field, you get put in positions where really you can't go, like with my situation, and because we're private, we can reveal a little bit, I can refer a little bit, like I have my 3 boys all, I was saying before, they played in bands and they paid them in drugs. Like, it's horrendous when you get to the point where you think, I've got to the end of what I know, I need to open up to someone else. So there's so much shame and guilt around it all for families.
Yeah.
If I admit this, then what kind of parent am I?
Yeah.
Who am I really? But I'll tell you one thing, when I get people to come in to do that, there's the 5-week online course we do, more than happy for people to jump in at any place and time. We used to do a closed group, but not anymore. Most everybody, the first thing they say is, oh my God, I've been carrying this on my own for so long. So it's less scary when they come in because they go, this is a relief.
Because it's so
That's
lonely.
a really important point to make, I think.
Yeah. Addiction's so lonely for everybody involved. Like even you could all be in a room together, but every person is lonely because of that. Not the guilt, the shame. Yeah, that's really hard to deal with.
So we talk about denial for the person using the substance. And you said that before, Beck. Denial in the family is maybe it'll get better. Maybe they'll grow out of it. Maybe it's not that bad. That's the form of denial. Or just pitting yourself against it, thinking you're butting heads with it. And something I heard early days for myself, this was someone that was long-term in recovery in AA, NA, Al-Anon. He was in overeaters, undereaters. He said, you've got to understand, if someone is in active addiction and you're challenging them, you're the enemy.
Yeah,
So we've got to really look at that and go, how do we change our dialogue around that? And some of the research I looked at, which is Professor Richard Bellerman's research, and learned a lot about the polyvagal theory. I think what we've got in the family program is really, really good tools to know you don't change everything. We just need to change a little bit in how we're inquiring and responding to the person. which comes back to the therapeutic model you deliver. That's what you're doing up there. People are being heard.
I think it's really difficult, and I always think how wonderful you are to work with families because it's so hard. It's hard for everyone involved. And I think about, people that I know personally and professionally who are parents going through this, and someone close to me now is going through it. And one of the hardest things I find is to find that balance between support because it's your child and boundaries and how hard to go with those boundaries. And it's almost heartbreaking. And that fear, that constant fear that families, partners, parents live with, are they going to get that phone call today that, the worst has happened, that someone's died, that someone's overdosed. And I just think it's such a difficult thing for families to navigate because that pressure and that normal parent guilt that we all have, am I getting it right, is just amplified because it's like, this wasn't in, we don't get a rule book, but this was not in any there's no, support column or anything on, how to put in boundaries or how much is too much sort of thing. And you would see that so much. What are you telling them when they're coming to you with those questions? What boundaries am I putting in? How am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough?
It's really important to learn some fundamental things about the neuroscience of addiction. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have studied that area a fair bit and gone on to study about the polyvagal theory, which really explains a lot how the different parts of the brain are working. Because people will often say, but they say one thing and do another. And yes. I go, so we've got to capture that moment where you see this disparity because often they're telling you what you want to hear. So one of the first things we talk about with family is we hear the story and we apply it to the neuroscience is what I do and go, well, yes, they're telling you this. They're in their fight, flight, freeze response and then there's appease. I'll tell you what you want to hear. But really, and we use the work of Dr. Kevin McCauley, which, Toby, I know you love him, and I still use him because he's the only researcher that talks about the craving.
Yeah.
And they go, yes, but they gave up for 2 weeks, 6 months. But as soon as the stress comes in and that craving kicks in, and once you know the parts of the brain that are operating against this top part of the brain, you can see their behaviour much clearer and better. I feel like in the family program, we've got the latest cutting-edge research that we're using, and it's in layman's terms for families, it's easy to understand. Easy to understand, yeah.
And so once they get that understanding and, it's time for them to sort of, I guess, it's not so much ultimatums, but it is boundaries. It's, if you're going to, if you're going to keep using, I can't be involved in this. If you want to get clean, I'm all in. How do you help someone navigate that to get it right? Because that is...
Yeah, those difficult conversations.
Yeah. And again, just, I guess so that they know how to do it without going to bed at night feeling so much guilt, which I'm sure they do anyway, but to ease that a little bit.
Oh, you've nailed it. I say to a lot of people that come in, because sometimes it's a partner that comes in, I go, you can divorce a partner, but you can't divorce your children.
No.
The umbilical cord's connected and you cut it and it goes straight back again. Totally different set of circumstances again, if it's that. But I say to people, the first boundary you've got to set is you've got to understand what recovery looks like. For families, that's what we go through in the first couple of sessions we do.
Yeah.
And then what I say to them is, so the first boundary we set is, I will aid your recovery, but I can no longer aid your addiction.
Yeah.
Now, we don't put a time limit on it going, most people would say, well, kick them out. That's what everyone else. I go, no, we don't have to do that. We can just start to develop a language where we're addressing, because addiction wants to hide. It doesn't want you putting it out in the open.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to get it out in the open, develop a dialogue. We say, this is a problem. I say, don't call it addiction, call it the problem. We all seem to be back in the problem, but we can't live like this anymore.
Yeah.
Let's move towards here. I will aid your recovery. This is what it looks like. Let's put things forward, options for you, but we can't keep going back. And the big thing, of course, is people throwing money at it.
Yeah. And I can't remember where I read, and I also see it that the trajectory for finances of a family of someone in addiction is downward. And that gets progressively worse year on year on year. And I thought, how sad is that collectively there is a group of people who are all throwing money at something that is probably making the situation worse, and they're all thinking that it's doing something positive.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just try this. If I just try that,
Yeah.
just do this. We keep adjusting our position of where it is. And that's probably why even in the family program we talk about grief, because what you've got to do is let go of control and start to realise all your behaviours that you're doing they're only aiding and abetting the problem.
And that's a pretty hard lesson for a parent or a loved one, a husband or wife, to learn that. Like it's quite confronting, because I think even, as a parent or a child or anything, when you have to confront something that you may haven't been, your behaviour that may not have been as optimal as it should be, it's difficult. But in this situation, to sit there and go, oh my goodness, I could be making this worse by making these decisions and choices that I think I should be making as a partner or a parent.
Yeah. I think by the time someone lands, and let's face it, we were talking earlier, Beck, about the cohort we're dealing with now getting younger and younger as well.
Yeah,
so very difficult for parents. It's not altogether the parents' fault. There's that whole thing out there in the world, that there's gratification coming at people from every angle, isn't it? And we're dealing with, it's multifaceted. I can see you're nodding your head, Toby. It's multifaceted.
Well, it is, and I was thinking about the cohort of individuals that are coming through our door at the moment. And, we talk about the guilt that families have in terms of aiding and abetting that addiction and trying to make the right decision for their loved one. And it's almost counterintuitive that we're putting forward the idea of boundaries and saying, we're not going to support you anymore when support is really the only thing that we can offer. How do you negotiate that, Julie, especially with families who are early to understanding the addiction and the addiction treatment process? Because a lot of families who I've spoken to find it a very tricky area, offering support in a non-supportive way.
Yeah, I think that's really important what you're saying. We've got to always, the other thing I factor in when we do an initial assessment with families as well, so I can go back through the history, but the age of the person, like we're talking about, for example, a young 19-year-old boy at the moment, and I always think, well, what's happened for you to get to this place now that at 19 you have this problem, whatever it is. And let's face it can be behavioural problems. It doesn't have to be a grand sort of addiction problem. It can just be the underlying anxiety and depression that goes with this polyvagal theory we're talking about is the issue around what's playing out. So for families, it's really important to sort of go, well, you've got to go back and look at every milestone that they've hit and what actions they've done up to this point to see how where do they want to go? Is that something this person wants to do? What's realistically going to happen here? Because often the family's got a point of view, they just want to get them in recovery, but the person doesn't want to go. So I feel like we can work with that there for a while. It might take a little bit of time, Toby, but you've just really got to be kind, I think.
Yeah.
Bring people along a little bit in that. That's why we do offer the family program sometimes to people before their loved one comes in.
Yeah.
Because they've got to get their head around, you make a good point, around, oh my God, what is it I really need to change here?
Yeah.
And I suppose too, part of that would be the acceptance that sometimes people aren't ready, that, they're not ready. And, there's lots of, there's theories of motivation that humans are motivated towards things that feel good. And until their using causes enough pain, they're going to be motivated towards using because it feels good, whereas getting clean and getting recovery is painful. And we see this all the time. People just aren't ready. And for me, it would be devastating as a mum or a partner to hear, oh no, I'm not ready. I can't do it. I'm just not ready. So how do you navigate that with them, I guess on a longer term basis when it's this push and pull, they're ready, they're not, they're ready, they're not, and it's like this waiting game?
I think education, there's a couple of old models I still use. One is stages of change. Like the person in front of me, do they really want to change? Realistically, we're talking about being real and getting out of denial. So I can pitch, and I've got a great article that I got, I think it's from New Zealand actually, how do I have a conversation with this person that's going to be effective? And let's face it, in addiction, we used to have this saying, I don't know if it still applies, but people would go out on the weekends and they'd be using, say, concerts, MDMA, so they'd be high all weekend and then Monday coming down. And we used to call it Suicide Tuesday. You'd watch them crash on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Only to find they're really desperate and they go, oh my God, I need help. This is a problem. They're panicking. Only to come around to Wednesday and all of a sudden the brain's sort of recalibrated and they've gone, I don't know what you're talking about. So for me with my lot, it was always like, oh my God, I need to get them help. Tuesday was my action day.
Yeah.
And then we get to Wednesday and it was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, the brain is an interesting thing. They've shifted away from that. So I say to all families, I believe there is a moment where you're going to get through. But how do we pitch the conversation that it's going to land in the right way? It's timing for me.
Yeah. And would you say that timing comes when a lot of the things that the person has are taken away? Ultimately, the money's taken away. We end up taking, accommodation gets taken away, things are made more difficult because we need to set those boundaries. And that's when they go, oh no, I'm at rock bottom now. And it's more painful to use than it is to get clean.
Yeah. I think you hit both talking about a really, really good point here. It's a sore point for families. We keep throwing things at the problem, just thinking, well, maybe this will work. Maybe that will work.
Yeah.
We keep adjusting our behaviour to them and we can't see what we're doing. Until you come in to do some work, say, with the family program, you really start to develop a strong perspective on how to set the boundary. Oh, here I go again. I'm being manipulated.
Yeah.
Yet again. And not necessarily deliberately, but the addict acts like, the person using a substance acts like a high and mighty because they're up here, but underneath it all, they're very codependent because they can't. The part of the brain that organises things is the first part that's damaged in with the addiction. So families really need to be able to step back and have a good look at, well, how do I change? We talk about there's an actual word. I'd be more intentional with your conversation with them. And I underline that. I go, well, how do we now? But you've got to get insight. And the only way to get that is with knowledge, which is, I think, what we do in the family program.
Yeah, getting more and more insight into addiction and how to support. I think even as you were just saying that, I was thinking about even staff or myself supporting people that aren't necessarily in treatment. And what you always have to do, and I guess it's easier because you're not as emotionally invested, but when it is someone that you've been working with a while, having those professional boundaries where when you're having conversations with them, you are listening and you're always thinking, no, I've got to look for what's true and correct right now, and I've got to deliver a message that's true and correct. And also you've got to have this level of preparedness that you might put your heart and soul into this and this may not go the way you think it's going. And we do that with people in treatment, but I guess I talk about others that you have that sort of closer bond with that it's been going on for a while. And for a family member, it's really difficult because if they're in that mindset, every conversation they're having around this sort of stuff will be like, this could just be, just air. This is hot air. This is, or you get your hopes up and you think this is it. They're going to go to treatment and then in the back of your mind, but they may just bail on me at the last minute. And it's just sort of this roller coaster of heartbreak for everybody involved.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing, isn't it? Thinking that they might have a couple of goes at recovery, But we see this often. Sometimes they come in, and I love the ones that come in and they go, oh, I've got to go. See, but that's part of our work we do too, is it? And I know that if someone is prepping themselves up to go, I can't do this, I thought it was a good idea to come into recovery. And then I get a chance to ring the family, which is our protocol, and say, look, they're actually going through something called post-acute withdrawal. They're in panic and fear. If you can hold the line, talk them down, give them another 24 hours, then the whole brain, they'll calm down a little bit more, So some of the work we do is quite intricate too.
And it's crucial a lot of the time what the loved ones are saying at that moment where they want to leave. We can hold them and we put in a lot of time to doing that, but at the end of it, it will be the loved one that puts in that boundary that will get them to stay, and no, it's not 100% of the time, but that is a crucial element to it. And that's why I think our program does work so well, and it works so well holistically, because as soon as you get on the phone and coach the family around and support them what they need to say, when that phone call happens, even if our client is irritated, annoyed, they've heard it and they've gone, like I can't pull this stunt right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We've kind of trying to put the weight where it needs to be for them. But if they choose to leave, I always say to the family, like, we give 24 hours, because sometimes, and I've seen, how often have we seen this, Toby? You would have seen this.
Yeah.
They leave and then they go, that was actually the best rehab I've ever been to. I need to get back.
Mm.
I hear that a lot, and they might have missed their window of opportunity and they've got to wait to come back. But we know we do good work there. And I know the team up there is the best team you've ever assembled. So,
but we see that a lot. In fact, we've had instances where people have done some work back in the community for 30 days to prove their want to come back and be part of that therapeutic community, be part of that program, and prove that willingness to change.
Yeah, and that work often involves a family member. So we had someone who, the relationship with mum was quite strained, and so part of that 30-day plan was, you need to treat your mum with respect and not get into these big screaming matches, and we're going to be talking to mum each week. And that 30 days, that young person ticked the box, and obviously meant a lot to them in that moment. And so we address everything and everyone.
Do you know one of the classic cases is going back a while, Toby, a young guy that came in and he said to me much later, he said, I just didn't like you. I said, oh, yeah, why is that? He said, because you taught my mum how to say no. I said, oh, interesting. And I often say that to parents, if they come in and they're really happy for you to do the family program, they want to change.
Yeah.
But if they have a resistance to that, this is probably a really important point to make, that means they're really just coming in for a temporary reprieve and they don't really want to change and they don't want the family to change. So this comes back to, for me, a really crucial point. We need the family to change, which is what you're saying and why we're doing this podcast, right? Because they've got to gather information and learn how to change how they're responding.
But I think that's why we make sure we offer it as a separate, like it doesn't matter whether your loved one comes into treatment, you can come into the family program because the families are suffering too.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter how much someone kicks up a stink not wanting family to be in the program, they get that opportunity irrespective of whether, their loved one's in treatment. And it does make a difference to them, and the feedback is so great. And you even hear about some of my staff that their family went through the family program and how great it was, and that's just incredible, because if we don't get it right the first time with the client, at least the family gets some support and some tools to navigate it in a bit more of a positive manner.
I was going to say, Julie, you've got several families that are repeatedly coming to that 6-week
program. We're very
fortunate,
Toby, yeah. So as you can imagine, so every 5 weeks it's the online, which there's a private session with me with families. They get to have that. But we offer it free and ongoing. So what happens is we've actually got people that have been the longest, one's about 7 years. Someone else has been coming consistently 4 years. But we've also got Pete. Pete's, who he's been coming since he was one of the earliest members at the rehab. So he comes and he gives back, from that perspective. So when we're doing the presentation, but it's a lot about the experiential stuff, what we do in the family program, where you hear people's stories and how they've changed. So everybody's in awe of listening to Pete because he gives that other perspective from the addiction perspective. And we've got another young guy, Paddy, whose mum came and did my program, and then he just went and walked into the rooms of NA. So he loves... So much of recovery, I believe, is about giving back. So we've got that. We've got another guy who's a psychologist who loves this program, and he's an Al-Anon member. So we've got a depth of people and they've all been coming for years.
Yeah.
Years. So we've developed, we always wanted that. I think I remember you saying that from the beginning, Toby. We've got a cohort that's sort of very strong.
Its own community, its own therapeutic community ultimately. Yeah,
it is.
It's incredible.
Because those longer standing people provide that sort of hope, that beacon of hope that families can gravitate towards, especially when there's been instances of sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's the journey, and to see families who've sort of progressed along that journey.
One other thing about that, like So what we were alluding to before, every family is different, every situation is different. So, for example, me, I live with a husband that had the problem and then my kids. But some people are what we call adult children. They've lived with a parent who has this problem. And so we've got a young girl who comes and speaks, and she speaks so articulately, amazing, saying what it's like as a child to live with a parent with a problem. So we have all these different, and then some other people, they're the partners of. So there's different aspects that you hear, and you just develop this broader perspective on how people are affected, again, in the family system. I must admit, I'm focused on my person with the problem, which is my husband, and at that stage I didn't think about how the kids were affected. And they're deeply, deeply wounded when it's kids as well.
Mm.
But Toby, I know how passionate your family are about the program.
Yeah, we've always been passionate. I mean, 10 years ago, Julie and I sat down and when we were constructing what we currently run today, and it hasn't really changed since all those days ago, but there was a sort of vision that we had, which was to provide hope, but also reality and understanding and education around what addiction was and how to support somebody who's going through the addiction and into recovery process, but then also to provide a space where family members, loved ones, friends, anybody that's been affected by the behaviour can essentially look at themselves and find the support and sort of kindred elements that heal all those relationships. So it's really been the backbone of what we've tried to achieve at Arrow since conception, since we started.
And is that because of your family's experience with Sam and what you guys went through?
Absolutely. We've been very open with the fact that Arrow exists because there was nothing for family. There was nothing. We had a huge experience in the sector for about 12 years trying to understand why Sam was an addict and how we were going to get him on the recovery pathway. And through that process and not having support, and, I talk about this story quite a bit, that I had to run in one evening with a woman who was on the family drug helpline saying that I had to leave the house I was living in because my brother was having an aggressive ice-induced episode. And sort of that lack of support and that feeling of worthlessness, it's not great for anybody. So when we started Arrow, the want was not only to help those individuals suffering from substance abuse, but it was to help the families and repair those relationships.
I think all of us, that's why we're here, are passionate. And same with me, that you have loss in your family around, like my youngest son, and it's just I don't want other families to go through. And when we sat down, Toby, and we worked out what we wanted to do here, it's like if you can prevent families, give them some sort of thread and hope, and that's the word you used earlier, there's a way I believe in any given moment there's a way of responding differently. I absolutely believe anyone can get recovery. We've just got to learn how to set the boundary, sort of work out how to change our dialogue with them. And I think we can be effective. It might not be instant, but I think we can be effective in pointing them in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember back to the sort of the latter days when Sam was moving into recovery, and we'd be having, we can't sugarcoat it, we'd be having arguments, but it wasn't something you'd take personally. You had to change the way you spoke to him. So rather than meeting him at his aggression level, it would be you would step aside and go, well, why is he reacting like this? And how do I, as we've spoken about, push forward that message that we're trying to present to him? And he'd walk away and you'd be, did that work? Did it not work? But sure enough, days later, there'd be a change in behaviour and you'd find that he was ready, starting to move towards being ready for turning his life around. So it's about not taking things personally and seeing the disease for what it is when it's exhibiting itself.
And you just use that word, which I use too. There's some trauma experts out there that don't like the word disease. But the point I really want to make here, I think is really important, that what we do at Arrow is it is a disease because we can see the parts of the brain that have changed. If you had cancer, we go, that's a disease. So we know the changes that have happened in the brain. But, some trauma experts go, oh, that's just shaming them. And the problem that I heard them say is, oh, the problem's in the family system. Well, any addict initially who is using blames everybody else. It's the nature of the part of the brain. So I think what a point of difference that we do is it's about, and you said it before, Beck, they've got to be accountable and responsible for themselves and how they affect people around them. And they've got to be accountable and responsible for the part they play in their addiction. That, for me, is the very first crucial step. If they're blaming family members, but watch, and I love how, because I see Josh and I hear him, the way he reflects back at people all the time, but hang on a minute, what's this?
And I guess that's key to our whole program is the behaviour change. And one thing I guess we live by as a staffing group even is, what is your part? What is the part that you played in that? Even if it's something that goes on that doesn't go well at work, we tell each other that when we're talking, we might be having a chat about, oh, do you know what happened on the weekend? And we'll turn around to each other and go, what did you do? Like, what's the common denominator here? And that flows down, and we really focus on that with our clients. And I guess ultimately everyone's doing that, because the family program's kind of doing that too, that everyone's got a part to play, and it's all about changing our behaviour, because we will not get rid of any of this drug use, any of the, this conflict, unless we change our behaviour. It's just not going away. And I think that's accountability from everyone is so important, and identifying what part you play, because we all play a part in everything that we interact with, and that's what we are constantly delivering to them. And Josh will, also, he does that often, and that's how he calls them out. He's like, but what did you do? It doesn't actually matter about, A, B and C. What we're talking about is what part you played.
And we've mentioned Josh, but you've got such a good team in your case management team. That's got to be said. Like, you've got your senior caseworker there. If you
I'm very blessed. Yes, I am. I would say I've got the A team, from the leadership team down to my cleaners. I'm just so blessed to have such a beautiful team. The support workers, I always say they're second to none, and we're trying to upskill them to provide a level of care that's above anything else. That the support workers don't just get, they're the support worker that hangs out. They're the support workers who have got skills, they've got abilities, because we all should be moving forward collectively and embracing behaviour change. And we can't just do it with a 1 hour session or one staff member that works about behaviour change. We all need to be calling out those behaviours and saying, hey, this is a better idea, and, you need to reflect on that. And so as we move forward, you just start to see the team, we're really cohesive, and now we're growing, and we're growing our skills, and we're developing and, I guess levelling up.
Yeah, I can see that, because I'm fortunate to have been there almost from the beginning, Toby, and I just say that to everyone. It's all your team is amazing, even your counsellors. Everyone's kind of passionate about.
Yeah, everyone's in. Everyone's on the journey. For every person that comes in, it doesn't matter who they are, what substance they choose, what their negative behaviours are. Everyone's in, and we're all going to go above and beyond and do everything we can to get them and their family to where, they want to be. And it's not even questioned. It's just like, yep, we're all in.
Yeah, it's good. That comes down. I can't even think how long you've been there now, Beck, but it's amazing you coming in and taking the lead role here as well. So,
thanks, Jules.
From there, Julie, just finally, what do you think are some great takeaways for anybody listening to this particular podcast that might be struggling with a loved one or contemplating getting help for somebody that they know? What are your number one takeaways for somebody that's considering that?
Well, they've just got to reach out and find, and we're more than happy, the team, even from the reception team. I've got beautiful little Georgia there as well. Just, you need people that understand what this is, that can empathise with and hear the story, because there's so many false starts out there. There's so many people that are, the medical model for me is, you can get caught up in thinking that your doctors are going to have all the answers, for example, and that's not the case. You've really got to get with the people that have what we're calling a holistic approach, not one approach. And that therapeutic model that we deliver, I believe in. But, we have our medical people there. But we cover such a broad spectrum that really just people have got to just reach out. It's the hardest thing. But I hear it so often. I know that's what you're trying to do here, Toby, for people to be able to find this starting point because people are bamboozled. Where do I start? That's the biggest problem.
Well, it's complicated. The brain is complicated. People are complicated. The sector is complicated. It's hard.
Do you know, one thing though is we haven't probably spoken about that I'm passionate about is the 12-step programs, which is still part of our program as well. But you just remind me that they go, AA, NA, all these programs, Al-Anon, all these 12-step programs, they go, it's a simple program for complicated people. So
Absolutely.
I feel like what we try to do at Arrow is take away the complication.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks, Julie, for joining us today. And
I appreciate all the work you do. I appreciate you and
thank
the
you.
amount of times you've saved us when we've needed some help. When things are about to go pear-shaped and you bring the families in, it's incredible what you do, Julie.
she's really the goalkeeper of the team.
The goalkeeper. I've got an analogy on that. I don't know if it's
Kick it
good
her
or not.
way. We're like, kick it to Julie.
Yeah, take a mark. But, I think, come back to probably finish on this when you ask me if someone's going to reach out to us and I can get to talk to them and I try to make myself available. I think every single family, their circumstances are important. They've got to be taken seriously. It's not just a generic thing. People have to be heard.
Yeah.
And often we're just saying, look, we're saying try this or try that. We're not saying everyone's going to come into the rehab, but if we can listen and hear what it is they need in that moment, because you said it before beautifully, both of you, sometimes people just aren't ready to change.
That's correct. And I think people seeking help need people that are, like you said, listening to the story. Because a lot of people work from self or from our own opinions and what we think should be right. Whereas I think when and this could be other places, I can't speak to other places, but I know for us that you're telling us a story and we're listening and we're taking that all in, and then we're going to think about what's best for you and we're going to choose to respond and not react, and we're not considering ourselves in that. We're considering the people we're working with, and that way we can give a more objective opinion and objective guidance, because we're not going, well, I have an opinion on that. I feel a certain way about that. I disagree with the way you've done that. We're not doing any of that. We're just listening to a story and we're saying, hey, this might just make it a bit easier for you.
I think, Toby, you hinted on this before, like you've got to have respect for the answer, and the solution is in the family system. It really, really is. And I heard you say that before, like you just need to be given some airtime to be heard. And then what's got to be applied really is what you're saying, Beck, is what is the solution they can apply there and then? Not something we think is convoluted over here, which is going to be foreign to them there. No.
What's going to work for them in that specific situation, in that specific moment. It doesn't matter if we haven't told someone to do that for 10 years. If we think that in that moment we've heard that story and gone, wow, this will work for you, then let's go for it.
Yeah, I like that. It's good. The last thing I want to say that has to be said is then you've got your intake team as well. And again, amazing.
My five-star intake team. My five-star intake team. Yes.
Look, it's got to be said because, Toby, I've been lucky enough to be with you almost from the beginning, seen how you've tried to grow all this, and, there's steps forwards and back, and, sometimes we got things right or whatever, but you have to be just been dogged in sort of the way you wanted to move forward and be the best. You wanted, I remember that you always just wanted Arrow to be the best. And I think you've really gone ahead with Beck in leaps and bounds, so. Kudos to you, Beck.
I'm so glad we've got this on video, Julie. I'm going to run with this for weeks. Thank you. I do appreciate it.
I'm still here working. I've been over 10 years now, but it's because this is cohesive now. It's so working so well. It really is everything. So
I think we finally got to that stage where it's people come in and they feel like that warmth and that concern and care. It's like a warm hug for the individuals that come through the door, but behind the scenes, it's a well-oiled machine. It's people know what they're doing. They come together. They make decisions as a collective group. It's good. Well, on that note, thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Loved it.
Awesome. All right.
Everyone.
Well,
till next time.
Good night or goodbye.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Beyond the Noise from Arrow Health. For help or more stories, visit arrowhealth.com.au.